Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you a powerful gaming PC I put together for about $500. This build did come in at a little over $500, but that's mostly because I bought all of the parts on Amazon as they were all Prime eligible, and so I did get free 2-day shipping. If you did shop around though, you could probably get this build or something very similar to it for right at or even under $500. I've included all of the links to the parts in this build in the description below, and if you're not sure how to build your own PC and you want to do so, I've also linked to our step-by-step PC build guide as well. For the core of this build, I went with an AMD Ryzen 5 2600 processor, a PowerColor RX 580 8GB graphics card, and a single 8GB stick of Corsair's Vengeance LPX memory. I believe this combination will be more than enough to run any game on a 1080p monitor at max settings while averaging at least 60 frames per second in most games, even in some of the more demanding titles out there. But I'll get to the actual benchmarks in just a second. For the other components in this system, I got an ADATA 480GB SSD, Seasonic S12III 550W power supply, ASRock's B450M HDV motherboard, and Thermaltake's H15 micro ATX case. None of these components are going to blow anyone away, but for a $500 budget, there are going to be some sacrifices, and ultimately those sacrifices are what allowed me to pair a Ryzen 5 2600 with an RX 580, which will provide a ton of performance for the amount I had to spend. The actual build process was fairly straightforward since this is a budget build and there's no AIO cooler or extra case fans or RGB lights to install, and because I didn't opt for an optical drive, it all went pretty quick. Here's a look at the build process. To test this build's performance, I benchmarked this system in 8 games on a 1080p monitor: Fortnite, PUBG, Rocket League, League of Legends, Apex Legends, Overwatch, The Witcher 3, and Borderlands 3. This system performed fairly well on more demanding titles running at max settings. For PUBG, the build averaged 66 frames per second on max settings, and it averaged 79 frames per second when bumping down to the higher setting mode. It averaged 72 frames per second on Fortnite on epic settings, but it bumped up to an average of just over 100 frames per second on high settings, and it got to well over 150 frames per second on medium settings. For The Witcher 3, it averaged 60 frames per second at max settings with NVIDIA Hairworks turned off, and about 73 frames per second on high settings, also with Hairworks turned off. Borderlands 3 gave it the biggest challenge, although I've read that the game is pretty taxing even on higher end GPUs. The build struggled to get to 50 frames per second on ultra settings and only averaged about 55 frames per second on high settings. However, there was a big performance increase jumping down to medium settings, where the build ran Borderlands 3 at an average of 80 frames per second. And as expected, the combination of the Ryzen 5 2600 and RX 580 easily handled the less demanding titles. It averaged over 130 to 150 FPS in Rocket League, League of Legends, and Overwatch, all on max settings. And while it only averaged about 78 frames per second on max settings for Apex Legends, bumping the settings down to high mode took the average frame rate up to over 100 frames per second there as well. Ultimately, for right around $500, this build brings excellent performance to the table. It easily handles 1080p gaming, and if you're looking for as smooth of in-game performance as possible, you could pair it with the 144Hz FreeSync monitor for an even better experience. It should also be noted that if you are looking for a new PC specifically for a non-demanding esports title like Rocket League, Fortnite, Apex Legends, or Overwatch, you could also save some money by dropping down to an RX 570 graphics card, which will also handle those games just fine while costing a bit less. One area where you could also save money is on the case. At the time of purchasing these parts, the Thermaltake Versa H15 was about $40. However, it has since jumped up to $50, and there are cheaper alternatives out there that will work just as well. I've made a couple of additional case recommendations in the description below. I did want to also point out that while the PowerColor RX 580 8GB graphics card is one of the more affordable RX 580s on the market, it is also one of the loudest options too. So if you don't want to deal with loud fans when your GPU is under heavy loads, you might want to look into some other RX 580 options. Again though, as the PowerColor RX 580 is one of the cheaper options on the market right now, you'll likely pay a premium to find a quieter option. Overall though, the system ran great. Obviously with the $500 budget, you aren't going to get everything you want. But if you're just looking to hop into your favorite games and play them on higher settings on a 1080p monitor, this build will do that and more. If you are interested in building this PC, again, I have included links to all of the parts and a link to our step-by-step build guide, all of which can be found in the description below. If you do purchase any parts through my links, just know that I do get a commission. That does help me out, and of course, I do appreciate the support. Also, as PC component prices change frequently, I do update this $500 build more often on my website. So if you want to check out the latest version of this build, just go to techguided.com and visit our $500 PC build page. If you have any questions on this build or the build process in general, post them in the comments and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. If you've got a new build coming up, good luck to you. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. Thanks for watching.